Welcome to Kickass Boomers, giving you the motivation and inspiration you need to make the most of your later years. Whether you're still in the planning stages or you're several years in, we'll share stories from boomers who refuse to act their age and continue to live a life inspired. Let them show you how being old can be new if you know what to do, with your host, Terry Lorbeer.
Hello and welcome to Kickass Boomers. My guest today is Doug Stebleton. Doug has been working in the entertainment business since 1987. Born and raised in Glasgow, Montana, he came to Hollywood at age 19 and has lived and worked in Southern California ever since. His expertise is music publishing for film and television. His company owns a catalog of songs that are licensed to film and television studios and to independent productions. Welcome, Doug. How are you today?
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to have you. And you were on way back in episode 86, where we talked about your documentary, The Mother of Normandy, the story of Simone Renaud. And today you're here to talk about your book, It's a Wonderful Time. So I will let you tell us the premise of the story and how it all came about.
Okay, good. Yeah, I should have said thanks for having me back on.
Yeah.
I was on earlier in the year, and thank you for that, to talk about Mother Normandy. Yeah, but this book is, so this book, I guess the origins of this book started back, as you said, I'm from Montana. I came out to Hollywood when I was about 19 years old in 1984, and I went to a music school for about a year. It was a year music school. After that, I got a job at the Beverly Hills Hotel as a valet parker, and I worked there for about 3 years. And during within maybe 6 months, I ended up getting a job driving this gentleman named David Tebbutt, who was a big wig over at NBC. He's the guy actually that brought Johnny Carson to Hollywood, and on the Tonight Show. And at the time, he was running the Carson productions, and so he lived at the hotel. And one of the valets was one of his drivers. And he ended up going to college. So my boss, John, said, "Hey, Mr. Tebbutt needs a new driver. I thought you'd be good." So I ended up getting the job driving Mr. Tebbutt. And so during that time, I lived in Hollywood, and I'd drop him off in Toluca Lake, and then I'd pick him up in the afternoon. And I used to drive by these railings off to the side of the road. I didn't really know what they were. So after driving by them many weeks, I just pulled over on the road and walked over to them and realized there were steps going down into the ground. So I walked down the steps and realized it was a walkway that went underneath the 101 freeway. And I remember there was there was a bum in there, like said, "Hey, get out of here." And it was his little house or something. But anyway, so then I realized what that was, and that was kind of interesting. So then fast forward about maybe, I don't know, that was in 85. Fast forward to 1993, I remember driving down the 101 freeway was the freeway that it was only about a mile or a mile and a half outside of Hollywood going into the valley. So I used to drive by that all the time when I was coming from the valley back into Hollywood, and I remember seeing the railings all the time. And when I would see it, I'd say, "Oh yeah, those are the railings for the underground walkway." And just one day my imagination got the best of me, and I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if somebody was, I didn't know any idea or story, but just as somebody's getting chased out of Hollywood on a stormy, rainy night, and they have something that somebody wants, and they get in a car wreck, they hit a telephone pole, they grab whatever they have, and they run down those steps, and they start running underneath the freeway. And as they do that, the telephone poles come down on the railings, and lightning strikes, and they go through a time warp, and they come up on the other side, the way they were running, same exact area, other side in 1940s Hollywood. And so that was the idea that I had. And I got back to my office, and I thought, I better write that down so I didn't forget it. So I just grabbed some blank pieces of paper out of the printer, and I started writing down, as much as I could. And then I eventually just put it into a Word document, and then I started working on it and adding, there was very much of a skeleton, then started adding some flesh to the bones, came up with the idea of why they were getting chased. And I ended up deciding to put it in 1946. And we can talk about why I picked that time, but that's kind of the origins of how it ended up becoming a book. But then I ended up, putting into a movie script about maybe 5 or 6 years or 10 years after that. I can't remember the date, in 2005. So that's kind of the origins of how it eventually became a novel.
Right. And when he went back in time, lo and behold, he came involved in the movie set of It's a Wonderful Life with
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, and of course, the famous director Frank Capra. So,
Yes.
what better story? That's fantastic. I love that you linked to that.
Yeah. Well, It's a Wonderful Life is definitely, if not one of my favorite films, if not my favorite film. So when I was trying to think of, what year, I thought, well, it would be the 40s. And then I kind of narrowed it down. And I thought, well, did the research, and they made that movie in the summer. I think it was, like April to July of 1946. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool, that would be the time that he goes back, and then have him eventually meet, through circumstances, get to work on the film and be on the set. And then we, as the reader, get to see what Frank Capra and Jimmy Stewart and what happened there. Some of it's very real, but we also took some creative license, to make things happen. But, and then also 1946, I thought was an interesting year. That was the main reason, because of It's a Wonderful Life. But, 1946 was right at the year before World War II ended. So a lot of the guys in the service for the Navy and the Army, and they were coming back from Europe and the Pacific. And I thought that would be an interesting time also in Hollywood, with all the servicemen coming back. And Jimmy Stewart had only been back about, gosh, I think he got back in October of 45. So he'd only been back in the States about maybe 7, 8, 9 months. And then he's making this movie. So I just thought that'd be an interesting time. And we kind of put some of his World War II experiences in the book. So that's kind of how that all happened and why I picked that year.
And that's interesting because, I was a young person watching that movie. I didn't realize that he made that so close right after returning from the war, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just didn't realize that the movie was that connected to the war. And of course, they have his brother being a war hero,
Yeah.
and all that. But I didn't realize, I thought it was like 5 or 6 years later, but it really was a year later, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. In real life. Yeah. Those guys were just back. Some of them were still overseas. They had, especially in, and Europe and the Pacific, occupation duty to keep their eye on the Germans and,
right.
And also the Japanese, because things are still kind of fresh,
And Jimmy Stewart was in the war. And looking back, a lot of the old Hollywood men were in the war. They were actually fighting in the war. And, I'm seeing that pop up on LinkedIn or Facebook a lot now, where, someone's in their 90s and they'll say, yeah, he was in the Air Force or here or there. And I didn't realize how many of our old favorites really were in the war.
Yeah, a lot of those guys were, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Clark Gable, and just a lot of them, Not like today, we have a few here and there, but back then they really stepped up for the country,
That's back when men were really men, and even that goes for Hollywood as well. They were really men, and and you can see it in the way they act. They bring all that with them to the role.
Yeah. That's why they're called the greatest generation. Yeah,
absolutely.
They were great.
And they were. They absolutely were.
Yeah.
So this is the perfect time for us to be reading or listening to the book, because it's the Christmas season and it's the 75th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Life. So, but I believe when the movie came out, it wasn't a big hit. What do you know about that?
Yeah, when it came out, the premiere for the movie was in December of 46 at the Globe Theater in New York. And I don't know the exact date. I think it was around maybe the 20th or something. Mm-hmm. And so we're still in the 75th, even though the 75th started a year ago around this time. This whole all through this year, 2022, is still the 75th. Mm-hmm. It actually came out to the public in January of 47. But when it came out, the reviews, it got mixed reviews, more good reviews than bad reviews, but it was some mixed reviews. Excuse me. And but the problem when it came out, the weekend that it came out, there was some really severe not thunderstorms, just severe winter storm on the East Coast. So that first weekend and the days that followed, it was so bad. A lot of people just stayed home to stay warm, and nobody went out. Not many went out to the movies. So it didn't do really well at the box office, and so it actually lost money. And so, combination of the mixed reviews and not making much at the box office, after about a month or so, it got put back on the shelves at RKO, and just nobody was really talking about it for a while. So that's kind of the beginnings of it were not good. But it did get nominated for like 5 Academy Awards. So it wasn't like a stinker or anything. It did get and it was also nominated for Best Picture. So I think most people liked it, but maybe it was maybe a little too dark or something because of dealing with suicide and stuff like that, because George is going to commit suicide because Uncle Billy loses all that $8,000, a lot of money back in the 30s or whenever that was supposed to take place. So anyway, but so it kind of got shelved, and everybody kind of forgot about it. But then there was something that happened in 1974 that we can talk about, which kind of brought a whole new generation of fans to the movie. But that was its beginnings. Mixed reviews, not good at the box office. I think it lost $500,000. Some of that was Frank Capra's personal money.
Right.
And
wow.
Yeah, and he had interesting thing is when he started Liberty Films, which is the company that he started with Paramount. This was his first film because he was in the war also. This was his first film, and he had a couple other partners, 3 other partners. George, I should know his name. He did The Diary of Anne Frank and Giant. George Stevens, there he is. Yeah, and that he was the partner in the company, and also William Wyler. And so when William Wyler did The Best Years of Our Lives, which is another World War II film with Dana Andrews and Frederick March about guys coming back from the war. And so Frank Capra had It's a Wonderful Life for the Oscars that year, and the Best Days of Our Best Years of Our Lives, or whatever it was called, with William Wyler, was nominated for an Academy Award. And they were both business partners in Liberty Films, and William Wyler's film won Best Picture, got the Academy Award that year.
Wow. And I kind of remember that as being kind of a dark film, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was called The Best Years of Our Lives. It was Frederick March, Dana Andrews, I think, was the other guy. And then the other guy was a real veteran. He had a hook hand, and he wasn't even an actor, but he played it, and he did an amazing job. And it was all about these guys trying to acclimate back into the society after coming back from the war.
Right. I remember that.
And it's an amazing film. It's really an amazing film. If no one's ever seen it, I highly recommend it. You can actually watch it on YouTube for free. Now, I think it's called The Best Years of Our Lives.
Well worth, and you know what? It pertains to guys coming back from Afghanistan or any of our current wars. It's the same exact thing.
Sure.
And we don't like not being military. Most of us regular civilians don't realize what a huge adjustment it is when you're coming back from war. We don't. I mean, I'm kind of getting my head wrapped around that now, but I'm 72 years old with all my life experience. It's easier for me now, but when I was younger, I'm like, so what's the big deal?
Yeah, we don't think about that stuff. Yeah, but war is war, whether it's from 100, 200 years ago to the last century, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and like you said, Afghanistan, Iraq. Yeah, these guys are dealing with the same sounds, guns, explosions, blood, guys losing their legs, death, and so that's got to have an effect on anybody. So to come back to normal peacetime life. I've seen guys that were guys from the Afghan war. One guy was talking about how it's been really tough for him to acclimate back into just civilian life, and he said where he would be. I think he said he was like at Home Depot, just getting some shopping, and some big pallet hit the floor, and he reacted to it like a bomb, because that's what they were used to for 40 years, all the tours they've done. So we don't know that as civilians unless we study it and research or met people. But it's a tough process for them.
It is tough. Now, the other thing about It's a Wonderful Life and your book, It's a Wonderful Time, you interjected a lot of spirituality into some of the scenes in the book. What were you trying to do with that?
Well, in the original script, as I told you, that it was my original idea, but I co-wrote it with my friend George Saunders, and we did it. It turned out really well. We didn't have any of that aspect in the script. It was more of about just a fun, kind of Back to the Future time travel romp. But instead of going to the 50s, they go to the 40s, and so there was not really any spirituality or anything like that. In the book version. When I brought Reinhardt on board, we talked about that, and we actually both are Christians in real life, but we didn't really want. It wasn't on our hearts to write a Christian book. It wasn't that, But we thought since the original movie, It's a Wonderful Life, did have some spiritual aspects, especially, the start of the movie, it's up in heaven, right? And
Right.
and the couple angels come together and somebody's praying for this guy, George Bailey. We need to help him. And they get this incompetent angel, Clarence, who needs to earn his wings. And so it starts off already from a spiritual standpoint, not knocking anybody over the head. And then also Jimmy Stewart, his character, George Bailey, is, suicidal. Remember that amazing scene where he's at the bar, Martini's bar, and he's praying and he's saying, "Dear Father in heaven, please help me. I don't know what to do. I'm at the end of my wits," because the money had been lost. And so there's some aspects of that. So we thought, let's bring some of that in with the same thing, not hitting anybody over the head, but we wanted to portray God in a positive way, where Hollywood usually portrays God in a negative way. Not all the time, but they definitely have an agenda against God and Christians and Judeo-Christian values. So we wanted to do a little of that because we felt a lot of people of faith would connect with it, and then even people that aren't really of faith or agnostics could still enjoy it because they weren't getting hit over the head. But so that's kind of why we brought that in.
Yeah, and you know what? It's Wonderful Life, I think, is the #1 inspirational movie of all time. So
yes, the AFI, American Film Institute, has it as the #1 film, inspirational film of all time, and I think it's on AFI number 11 of best films of all time, which is pretty good when you think about
especially for one that was only in the theaters for about a month. Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you tied your book to that film. What lessons did Evan learn? Evan's the main character in your book. What lessons did he learn in his time travels? Spiritual lessons. Like, did he learn anything?
Well, with Evan, when Reinhard and I decided to bring some of those aspects in to the characters, Evan's just basically a movie geek. He loves old movie history, and he's a film trailer editor. So he's got that kind of down. And he loves to, drive the old car, and you notice he likes the old clothes. So he's very comfortable when he goes back to the 40s. At first, he thinks it's a dream or that he's dead, but then he realizes, no, I'm really here, and he realizes what happened. So with Evan, we put him that he was like a believer in God, but kind of like not an agnostic, but he has a connection that God's real. He does, he knows, he's smart enough to know that buildings don't build themselves; they need a builder, and paintings don't paint themselves; they need a painter. So he knows there's some kind of intelligent design. So, but that's about. And there are times through the book where he prays. He's like, "Thank you, God, for letting me live. Thank you for getting me this money." Just things that thinks of God in a positive way. So on his journey through the books, we might dig into it a little deeper there. But Coupe, who is the other time traveler, he's a different guy, from a different time. Evan comes from 2021 and goes back to 46, and Coupe comes from 1899 and goes into the future to 1944, 2 years before Evan's there. So he's kind of already acclimated,
Right.
being there, and he loves the technology because he's coming, Nikola Tesla's assistant. They're dealing with pretty primitive stuff back in the primitive technology back in the late 1890s. So, but his background, he's I believe we have him coming from Harlem. I mean, he was born in 1870, so his parents were slaves in the South, and they end up moving after slavery's done. They end up moving up to the north into New York, and he ends up being kind of a genius and going to the library, reading books, speaking a couple of different languages. But he is brought up like with in the Baptist kind of, in Christianity Baptist. So he has more of a connection to God, and his faith is a lot deeper and stronger than Evan's. And again, we didn't go over the top with that, but we kind of, it was the first book. So we wanted to establish some of the foundation of that, even though it's not a Christian series.
Right.
We wanted to keep some of those elements in there, and we'll discover those more as we go. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
There you go. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you and Reinhard Denke, I think I said his name correctly, right?
Yeah, his actually name is spelled D-E-N-K, and it's actually rhymes with tank. So Danka.
Denke.
Like,
okay.
remember the coffee Sanka? So it's
Right.
just put a D in front of it. Danka is how you
Denke.
pronounce it. Yeah. I had a tough time with it too. Yeah, Reinhard
So he
Denke.
was you co-wrote with him. So tell us a little bit about the process of writing the book and then doing the audio version. How long did that take? And
Yeah.
give us a little background on that.
Sure. When I met Reinhardt about 3 or 4 years ago through a mutual friend named Michael Cummings, and he said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to my friend Reinhardt." He goes, "You guys, I think we'll have a lot in common." So we both were World War II history buffs and also Hollywood history buffs. And Reinhardt, so we got together for coffee, and I think Reinhardt had Michael had given him my original script that the book was written from.
Mhm.
So when we met, he goes, "Doug, I read your script." He goes, "Man, it was so good." And so that's when we first met. Before I was even going to have him write with me, he liked it. And then I said, "Well, send me a couple of your scripts." So he sent me 2 of his scripts, and I read his scripts, and I was thinking, "Wow, this guy he's an excellent writer. He was so good and descriptive and storytelling and character." So that's how we first met. And then when I started the process with George and writing the first draft, we weren't getting the exact tone that I wanted. So decided to move on to somebody else, and still gave George acknowledgments in the book because he's great, and we're probably actually going to work with George a little on the second book too. But anyway, so I had to figure out who I wanted, because I'm the writing process. It's really not my passion to be an author. I'm just doing it out of necessity because I need to get these done.
Right.
And with George, he was doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the first draft, and same with Reinhardt. But I'm not just twiddling my thumbs. I'm involved in the whole process, and giving suggestions, I'm pretty good with dialogue and some of the story. So with Reinhardt, I said, "Hey, I got this first draft done." I said, "What do you think about, coming on with me and being a co-writer?" And I said, "Also, I'd like to make you a partner in the whole series." And so he loved that idea. So we got together. And so the process that we came up with is, excuse me, I'm just going to quick drink. Is I said, "Listen, you're a great writer. Why don't you do the majority of the writing at the start. We'll go from the first draft from the script, the first draft from the script." And George had done a lot of great stuff on there, but it needed to be better. And so Reinhardt would write about maybe 10 to 15 pages a day, and then he would send them to me, and then I would go through them, in a Word doc, and then I would go through and make my changes. Yeah, I like this. Let's change that. Let's do that. And I'd send it back to Reinhardt. He'd make the changes. Then he'd send it back to me. And I usually like, "Okay, good. Those are done." And then he would give me the next. So we did that process. And there was the month of April of that year kind of was a wash because he got bronchitis. So he was not feeling well and couldn't do much writing. But anyway, we got the thing done. I think we started in, I don't know, maybe February, March. And I think we were done by June or so. We wanted to get it done to make available for last Christmas, because since It's Wonderful Life is a Christmas, it's not a Christmas movie, but it takes place during Christmas time.
Right.
Everybody thinks it's the Christmas movie, and it comes out at Christmas. We wanted to make the book available during that time, because from a marketing standpoint, it would be really stupid not to make it, have it available, for promotion and marketing. So we ended up hitting our deadline. We got the book done, and I had a copy edited and proofread, and I can go through that whole process. But we got it done, and it was available, I think, on October 15th, couple months before Christmas.
That's really quick. You did a good job, because normally it could take a lot longer than that. So you guys really worked hard to get it out by October.
Yeah, we set ourselves deadlines, and I can tell you the story eventually. I did have a lady named Martha Bulin from Bulin Publishing Services, who I hired to be my book coach / marketing consultant. So she really helped me with, we would backtrack. Well, we need to get it done by hand, so by October 15th. So you have to have the copy editing done by September. And we just backtrack. So I said, wow, we got to get this thing done by the 15th of June to catch all those deadlines. So Reinhardt and I, that was our process. Yeah. And he would send it to me. I'd send it back. We discuss, we get together for coffee, maybe every 10 days and just discuss more. And so that was the process that we did, and worked really well for us. And so after we got the book done, of going back and forth, finally getting it done, I did send it out to some beta readers, which I highly suggest for people that are writing. You need fresh eyes, because when you're writing, it's like you're so engulfed in it. You need to hear some negative stuff, good critique. So I'd send it to I think I reached out to 10 people. And I knew out of the 10, you kind of have to deduct. So out of the 10 people,
Right.
They all say they're going to read it, but you got to say, okay, like 30% are their heart's in the right place, but they're not going to get through it.
Right.
So if they get through, great. So then there's 6 left over. So, and then out of the 6, they're going to be just okay, but there's going to be about 3 that are really going to give you great critique. And that's exactly what happened. And 3 of them said, yeah, I got halfway through. It was really good, but I got busy with stuff. Okay. So count. Yeah.
Right.
And then the other 3, the critique was good, a few little things, a couple notes, but not very helpful. But the 3 that 2 of them were actually real writers. And those are the ones I really wanted to come through because they've written books before.
Right.
And those 3 and that was the best critique I got from all of them. And so I took that information, got together with Reinhard, and we said, this is good critique. This they're right about this. And we really started making it even better from fresh eyeballs and advice. And then we did another draft. I think altogether we did about maybe 2 or 3 drafts of that book. Finally got it done. Since I hired Martha, when I hired Martha, it was great because this is, like I said, I'm a newbie writer. So a year before I started the whole even writing process, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, seeing the people who were doing what, reading a lot of articles. And so I was kind of prepared for it. But then meeting Martha was great because she had her already circle of people that she works with. So when it came to a copy editor, she put me in touch with a copy editor. And then a proofreader. She had a proofreader. I needed to hire a lady. So when you get it done, to put it up on YouTube and to get the prices right, she has a lady that does that. And so,
how about the cover? Who did she recommend the cover art?
The cover, actually, I had before I even met Martha, I had already been working on the cover.
Okay.
You know, I'd put up the website and the Facebook page, all that stuff, probably 9 months before the book was even starting to be written.
Excellent.
Because my background is in film and music and TV. Not that I'm a marketing guy, but you just learn a lot through the years. So I just knew you got to get all this stuff now and not be pressured at the last minute. So I set up a lot of stuff, had all that stuff in place. But with the editor, what was the question? Because I lost my train of thought.
The cover. I love the cover.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
which later on, people that watch this on Zoom, you'll be able to see it. It's right behind Doug. Is a picture of the cover. It's beautiful.
The cover right there.
Yeah, I love it.
That's what I forgot. Yeah. So basically, I had already started on the cover, and the cover was basically. Let me see if I can point to the where's it at? Yeah, the guy and the car. Because it's backwards. We're not there. And there was a guy running into the portal.
Okay.
And that was the first thing in the palm trees. But I had a guy, somebody had recommended a guy from the Philippines, a really good graphic artist, lot less money. And I would highly recommend, that's a great way to do it. There are people that are really good. Right. And he did a good job, but he wasn't, and there was a little lost in translation. He spoke English, but so, but it was the first thing, and I started with that. But then there's a guy named Robbie Destaki who I've used through the years on stuff. He's always so busy, but I said, hey, Robbie, I got this, but it needs to be better. So he took it to a whole nother level, and we had a guy running into the thing. And then one day I woke up from a nap, and I thought, I just got this thing, and I thought, this car here, which is a 1938 Ford Coupe, is a very important part in the book.
It is. It is. That's why I love that you put that on the cover. It's very important.
So I woke up from a nap one day and I thought, that car is a cool looking car. It's classic and it's a big part of the thing. I need to put that on the front because he's in the car when he hits the at the start. So put that in there. And so the lady, the interior design lady who did the interior of the book was another Martha person. Her name was Christy Day, I believe. And so I said, hey, I need a car. I provided the car. Actually, I went online to look for cars, and I sent some to Reinhard, and we picked the blue one because blue's my favorite color. He liked it, favorite color. And I found a place in Florida that had classic cars, and I got in touch with the guy and I said, hey, can I use this to put on my book cover? And the guy was really nice, and you have to deal with copyright issues and stuff. And he said, we already sold that car about a year ago. We need to take that off the website. So I end up, and I would tell people to do this. If you find stuff, you just can't use stuff if it's not yours. You got to get either pay for it or get permission to use it for gratis. So this guy was cool. And I sent an email to him saying, hey, can you please agree to this? And it's like, hi, my classic cars, this is our picture. We give you the rights for perpetuity, for this and that at no charge. And so I have an email that I printed that. I got it in my folder. So if anybody ever came back, I'm protected. But that's how I got that car. And it didn't have the lights, but Christy said, hey, we were thinking maybe putting the lights on. I said, I like that idea.
Yep.
And instead of the guy running in, we had Evan. If you look at him, he's kind of dresses in the 40s. So he's got his things rolled up and he's got some wool pants on and he's looking at this big thing that is, before he gets sucked through. So that's how the book cover came about. It didn't happen in one thing. It was a process of, I got one guy and it was okay. But then I brought Robbie on board and, he made it better with the palm trees and this and that. And then Chrissy and her guy put the car in there and we just told him what we felt the guy should look like with his hands on his hips. So it was a process, but it came out very good, I think, in the end. So
it really did. And I like the fact that the lights are on in the car. That does add something to the cover. It just really does.
It does. Yeah. And again, that was not my idea. That was Christy saying, we were thinking, and I said, what? I like that idea. So it's great to have, I always like to tell people, it's always great to surround yourself with people that are equal talented or even more talented than you, what I'm saying? Because they all have their expertise in whatever they do. Right. And when you get a lot of those, that counsel, you come up with a great product usually. So
I agree. And I love the fact you had two women working with you on this that are named Martha, because my mother's name was Martha. And
really?
Yes. And she didn't like the name, but so she had 11 children, 5 daughters. None of us are named Martha. She did not like the name, but I think it's cool that you work with 2 Marthas on this. That's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when I think about it, I never even thought about it till you just mentioned that, but Martha, a woman, and she put me in touch with this one guy who was the copy editor and he was going to do it, but then the scheduling didn't work. So he put me in touch with one of his editors. Her name was Andrea, another woman. Right. And then the lady that wrote the press release, which was part of Martha's, another woman. and then Maggie, who's the lady that does all the Amazon stuff, another woman.
There you go.
And I think there was even one more. So and then Christy, the lady that helped on the book cover, the interior. Yeah, so I worked with a lot of women. I didn't even realize that.
You're surrounded by fabulous women.
Fabulous women, fabulous, talented women. And so it didn't even dawn on me. But there was the guy that did the audiobook was a man. But that doesn't matter. It's like whoever can do a great job. You don't need to figure out that doesn't matter. So I think that's great that I got to work with all these talented women. Yeah, and I'll go back to them too. We're working on book 2 right now, so they were just all great. So yeah.
Oh, so you'll use them again and again. Absolutely. Sure. So how different was the audio process, doing the audio book? I'm thinking that's totally different from a written book.
Totally different. Yeah. So the book was done. I was going to try to have start doing the book in December of last year. And I had already hired Reinhard, probably around July or August. I had already teed him up and we were ready. Had to get the book out first. And then John Schneider, who's a friend of mine, the actor, he read the book. I was hoping that he would just give me an endorsement, and he did give me an endorsement for the book. But he liked it so much, he said, "Hey, I'd be happy to do the audiobook." So we were working on that process to have him, and he did a great job. He did a couple chapters, and he was so good. He's just a seasoned veteran actor. Right. But then his schedule got busy, and so it ended up working out that I didn't work with John on good terms and everything, but I ended up bringing another guy that Elias had in his stable. His name was Joshua Manning, who did an excellent job. And so I ended up using Joshua for the narration and all the male voices, and then for all the female characters, I got this girl named Susie, a woman. She's probably in her early 30s. Her name is Susie Jackson. She's done tons of books. I was very honored and fortunate and blessed to have her say yes.
Right.
She did such a great job on the women characters. And then Coupe, who in the book, as I told you, is a black guy from the last century. I wanted to have a real authentic, but not a Southern voice. He's a scientist, so his voice pattern. We had him talking like the way Edison and those guys talked, very intellectual from the late 1800s. So that Coupe was a guy. His name was Fentress Moore. He was one of Elias's at Audio Productions in the stable. And when I told him what I wanted, because I think I got the guy, so I heard him and he read some of the copy, and I said, yeah, that's the guy. So I have three different voices in the book, on the audiobook, and some people just use one voice, which is totally fine. They can
Right.
do all the men can do women voices, women can do men voices. But in my case, I thought I want to just go all out. So I got male, one to do the male, female, and then the Coupe voice, and it turned out you got a chance to hear some of it, so you see
I
they
did. Yeah. It's
really good
really,
job. The
yeah,
performances I thought were really well done.
excellent.
So
Yep.
that process, yeah, I got to find a company to do it first. There's a lot of companies out there. I was fortunate enough to meet Elias through a friend of mine, Jeff Levin, who's a composer. I talked to him about maybe hiring his studio to do it, and he said, well, I could do it, but I don't really do that much. But he said, you should talk to my friend John, who I just talked to. He's putting out a book, and he was very happy with the company that put out his audiobook. So I called, got John's number, and he gave me Elias's number, E-Audio Productions. I think they're in Virginia. And so I started working with Elias right off the bat, and so the process took us a lot longer than we planned, but I was not under a deadline like I was for the book. Because the audiobook, they say to put the audiobook maybe 3 months after the book comes out, so you give it a chance for the book to sell, get some more fan base, and then the audiobook comes out. It's another extension of the book. You got the printed version, you got the ebook, and then the audiobook comes out. So we were thinking about having it done maybe in March or April, and then Joshua got COVID. That set us back a little. And I was not, and then we just went back and forth. It took a lot longer than we planned, but I told Elias, and then we kept tweaking, making things better. He had to edit this and that, do some retakes. And so it took, we finally got it done in September, actually.
Oh,
a lot
wow.
longer. But I was not under any pressure to get it done. And Elias kept wanting, he was saying, Doug, this is one of the best audiobooks I've ever done. He said, so I'm spending a lot of extra time in the editing and the EQ and this and that. And I said, Elias, I said, take the time you need. I said, I'm not really in a hurry. I just want to get it done so we can have at least done for Christmas this year.
Right.
So we got it done, but it was a process. But the way it's different is you have to deal with voice actors, so and then you have to hear what they say, and there's a lot of mispronunciations. Joshua actually lives in Edinburgh, Scotland. He's actually a British guy. His father is, I believe, English, and his mother is from New York, but he was raised pretty much over in Europe. And so he's got this great, and he's a stage actor, and he's done really well. He's done a lot of audiobooks. When I heard his voice, I was listening on the roster. You have to, basically audition people. When I was on Elias's roster, I think he's got a couple hundred, male and female. So I was going through listening to their things, and like, okay, no. And I wasn't really finding anybody on the male side. And then I listened to a sample of something, just a sample, and I heard Josh's voice. I said, oh, that's it. It was kind of like Mike Rowe, that guy Mike Rowe for Dirty Jobs.
Right.
But I got the deep voice.
Right.
So I heard Joshua. I said, oh, that's the guy. He could do it. So I got in touch with Elias. So that's the guy. So brought him on. And then on the female side, I didn't find anything till I went to, I just thought, I was looking at different rosters. With Elias, you can use his people, but you don't have to use his people. Excuse me. You can go out and find. So I wasn't really finding anybody on his roster on the female side. They were good, but they weren't what I was looking for. And I went to some other rosters, wasn't finding it. So I just went to Google, and Google's an amazing thing.
It is.
And
wow.
I put top female book narrators. And I was going through, and I found this one girl. She was actually a book narrator herself. And it was her top 5 list of her favorite narrators. And so I went to the list, and out of 5, 4 of them were males, and there was one woman. And I think she was number 3 on there. So number 5. And so when she got to the third one, she said, oh, and basically it was something like this. And my number 3 is Susie Jackson. Oh my gosh, Susie Jackson. She is so good. As a narrator myself, I love her so much because the way she tells the story, the way that she does the characters, the inflections of her voice, her passion. And I'm already sold just by hearing her describe Susie. Right. And so I thought, well, instead of going to listen to Susie do other people's books, I want to just see who Susie is. So I went on and I found some videos of Susie. One of them, she was talking about a book that she had done, but she wasn't doing any character. She was being herself. And it was basically saying, hi, it's Susie Jackson. I just finished my book, 3 Little Bears Go to go to LA or whatever it was, just some stupid title, but whatever the
Right.
title was. And she goes, when I come home after a tough day and I go and I talk to my two little kids in bed and I read it to them and they love it. And so as I'm hearing her, I'm like, oh, wow, this girl could be my main character, Dorothy,
Right.
who's 23, but she just had a tone in her voice and her personality. And so I reached out to Susie. She didn't know me from Adam. And I just said, hey, this is what it's about. The book, would love. I heard you. And she got back to me and said she'd do it. And she's done so many books. So like I said, I'm sure she's busy, but maybe she
Wow.
connected with the material. I don't know, but she did an amazing job. And I had to work out a separate deal for her because she wasn't in Elias's, did a deal with him, like an overall deal.
Right.
Included the voice actors and stuff, or the narrators, but she was separate. So I worked out a separate deal with her and her agent, and that worked out fine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the process. You have to be a casting director yourself. You just, as you're an author, great. But if you're going to make an audiobook, you have to take off the writer cap and put on your producer cap and your casting cap. You got to listen, and you know your characters better than anybody. So you'll know what's not going to work. I even had I gave some copy of a couple pages to Elias, to the women, so I could actually hear them do the dialogue of Dorothy. And they were good. They weren't bad, don't get me wrong, but it just, it wasn't right. Yeah. It wasn't right. And you know when it's not right, but when it's right, and that's when I heard Susie's regular voice. And then after I heard her regular voice, I went back and heard some of her stuff and I said, wow, this girl is a real pro. So that's how I found her. So you have to do a little research. You just can't sit there on your hands and just think it's all going to come to me. No, it's the opposite. You have to be proactive in every aspect. You got to find the place, the guy that's going to produce it. You got to find the narrator or narrators or characters. You have to be prepared to listen to the stuff. I had to go through that book two or three times, word for word, as I'm hearing their dialogues. Oh no, that he said Marlboros instead of Marlboros. Little things, but once it's recorded, it's done. So you have to make sure. So they have to do a lot of pickups, and it's just a lot of back and forth. And but the end thing is very rewarding when you get it done. So
it is. And so I think your message is trust yourself as the author of the book to know which voice is going to be the best one. Don't try and have someone else do that for you because it might not come out as good. You know what's in your head as far as these characters are. So you're the best one to pick the voices.
That's 100% right. Yeah. You have to kind of go with your instincts, your gut, and you'll know the ones that don't work. But when you hear the ones that do it, so like it just fits. It's a good fit. So you have to do the research. You have to listen to a lot of people, a lot of samples and stuff.
It's a lot of work, but when you do it, it comes out right in the end, right?
Yeah. And so, I'm planning on doing an audiobook for number 2. So I will go back to the same people if they're available. I would love to keep them, which is great for them. They get paid and it's more work, and I'm happy with their performance. So, but yeah, you got to be proactive in every aspect of the process.
So this is going to be a series. Do you have a set number in your head, or is it like it could go on for a while?
That's a good question because, it is going to be a series, and I don't have a set number. No, I know. Okay. Excuse me. We're working on book 2 right now, and we already know what book 3 is going to be about. We set it up for that.
Okay.
We're not the type, because Reinhardt and I are both kind of busy with other things in life. Books is not the only thing that we do. This is just one aspect.
Only a part.
So we some people write 4 books a year. I don't even know how that. I can't even think of that. So we're more like 1 book every year and a half or 2 years, maybe sooner. But that's that works for our schedule.
Right.
But the series aspect, I don't know how many. My research is, when you're doing a series, unless you have a big traditional publisher behind you, HarperCollins, where they're paying for all the marketing and promo, your success is a lot better because you're getting so much exposure. When you're a self-publisher or an independent publisher, which is kind of where I fall into since I brought Martha and her professional team, I had some money in marketing, a little more exposure, sold some books, did okay, but from my research with the series, they say you got to get about 3 books out. But like on the 4th book is when you start seeing some of your returns financially, and you've had a good 3, 4, 5 years of a fan base. So I already know that I need to get 1. I got 1 done. I'm working on 2. Preferably for me, I'd like to get 3 done because I think since my the series is called the Hollywood Time Travel series, I do think it's a good fit for Hollywood, for one
Yes.
of the streaming studios, Hulu, Netflix, Apple TV. They're looking for content, and it deals with movies and movie stars and celebrities of times past and maybe in the future. So
Right.
there's a fit there, but I think it would be unwise for me to try to go do a deal now with one book. I
Hmm.
think I could say, well, here's the concept. There's 3 are done, and we could do this for 10 books, or we could go for longer. But these days, a book can be a series. The first book could actually be a limited series, like the Stephen King book that he did. I think it came out I don't know, a few years ago, but they made, I think it was Hulu made a series out of just book. It was a book. It was called
Right.
11. It was about John F. Kennedy, the day that Kennedy 11/22/62, when Kennedy was shot.
Right.
It was all about that, and so it was his one-off book, and they made it into, I think, 6 episodes,
Right.
6 1-hour episodes. So I'm kind of thinking in my mind that if I was fortunate enough to get one of the streaming studios on board to buy the series or to make it into so book 1, which is behind me, could be I think it's 350 pages, so that could be maybe a 5 to 7 episodes,
Right.
and then book 2. So that's what I'm hoping, but I don't want to do that now. I think I got to get a few books done before I
Yeah,
go.
I think that's a good idea. And all
Yeah.
of your books are going to connect back to movies. Are they going to be all older movies, or some of them might be more modern?
Yes, we could do that.
Well, you're
Right.
going back in time, so I'm thinking,
Yeah, back book 2 goes it goes back in time again, and rather than a movie, it's dealing with a certain movie star. And there's a lot
ah,
of other things happening. It's going to be good. And then the third book is we're going into the future, into the 50s, and it's
oh,
on a
okay.
very, very, very famous movie. And yeah, so there's really endless of the movies we could pick, but we have to just find the right ones that make sense. But yeah, it could go
Right.
for a while. Or it could end up not losing its mojo, and after 3 books we're done. But I hope that's not the case. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, sounds good. And I think it's going to do very well. I do think it's going to be picked up eventually with some kind of a streaming. I can see that because people love time travel. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, boomers love old Hollywood. We really do. We love,
Yes.
the actors and actresses and their costumes that they
Yeah.
wore. We just love all of that. So, and the
Yeah.
time travel pulls it in where the younger people are going to love it. So you're going to get boomers,
Exactly.
everybody, any generation can love this.
It's time travel and historical fiction. And
Yes.
when people ask me how to describe the book 1, I always say Back to the Future meets Midnight in Paris, which was a Woody Allen film, on the set of It's a Wonderful Life. They go, oh, I got it. That sounds cool. And I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but if people are interested in finding out about the book, the website is hollywoodtimetravel.com. And
Right.
that's pretty much the best place. It has where you can buy the print book on Amazon or the ebook, and there's also a thing that says buy the audiobook, and there's a landing page of different places to buy the audiobook. So yeah, hollywoodtimetravel.com has everything on there, the pictures, the synopsis, what happens in book 1. I just finished an audiobook trailer that's up on there, and you can kind of find out everything you need to know about it on that website.
And I think you have a little surprise gift when people go on the website too, right? They can go ahead and tell us
Yeah,
what.
that's true. We put through my research, I found that this is a good thing to do. So if people, rather than buying the book first, if they wanted to get a little taste of it, I put a thing up there where you can download the first 3 chapters of the book for free. You just have to put your email address, so it'll be good for me to keep on as I build my email list. But happy to give it to people to get a little sample if they like it. And then there's also there is a sample of the audiobook, which is only 5 minutes long, but little taste. But yeah, so you can get the first 3 chapters for free. Just download it,
That's
from
great.
the website.
And believe me, once you get the first 3 chapters, you're going to want to read the
Yeah.
whole thing. So you're going to want the book or the audio book or the ebook. You're going to want to get one of those because it's a really fun, interesting book. And you know what? We all need ways to de-stress today
Yeah.
and unwind because it's such a crazy world that we're living in. This
Yeah.
is the perfect way because it's time travel, it's old Hollywood. It's a really fun way to de-stress and unwind. So I think,
Yeah.
and it's going to make a perfect Christmas gift. So those
Yeah,
of
that's
you who are
right.
still looking for gifts for people, this can be given to anybody, young, old, anyone. So
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
definitely worthwhile. So,
And I would say if anybody's a fan of It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, I think they'll really connect to the book because it really does. It's an homage to that movie and to Frank Capra and Donna Reed and Jimmy Stewart. And so you get to kind of be not a fly on the wall. You get to kind of see what it was like through Evan's eyes being there working on the movie, and it's all portrayed in a good way. So.
Right. I love it. I love it all. It's great. So my audience, you can go to kickassboomers.com, go to the show notes where the website will be clickable, or it's easy to remember too, hollywoodtimetravel.com. That's the website. All of the information is there. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us the background. I love hearing the background of how you went about pulling this all together. And we have so many authors that listen. So this is really a great podcast for the Boomer Nation. And this is I have an international audience. So people are listening all over the world. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really great. So 26 different countries. And I've interviewed people from different countries. So there's a big international audience as well. So they're going to want to reach out and buy it as well. So
sure. Yeah. It's a technology day. It's just go on there and just a click. Yeah, it's amazing.
Absolutely. I can interview anyone, anywhere. When I first told my sister I was going to start a podcast, she said, well, how are you going to go interview all these people in person? I go, no, I'm going to be on Zoom. Zoom is so easy. So one of my initial ones was a man from, oh God, now it went right out of my head, from a country way across the world. And I've been interviewed a man in Russia and a woman in Japan, and he was Thailand. He was one of my first ones, Thailand. Interviewed him in Thailand. So it's just so exciting to talk to all these very, very interesting people. And, they've become listeners, and then there are people that live in Thailand that know them are starting to listen. So that's how you build your international audience, which is wonderful.
Yeah, you just have to do it, like writing a book or starting a podcast.
Just do it, right?
Get off our butts and do it.
And do it.
Look at this. You're talking to people in different countries and a lot of listeners, and that's amazing. So congratulations. And you get to do it just from looks like you're in a room in your house. You don't have to leave.
In my house, the guest room in my house. The guest room is the quietest room. That's why I'm up here in this room. I have an office, but it's too open to the rest of the house. So I have to do my podcast but you can do it. You find there are people that go into their walk-in closets and do their podcast. It's amazing where people find to do their podcast. They just need a quiet place, and there you go.
Quiet place. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again. And we'll have to do it again when your next book comes out. We'll do this all over again.
I'll keep you posted when that happens. Thank you so much for having me on again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. I've enjoyed it. Thanks.
Me too.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Kickass Boomers. For more information on today's guest, along with the show notes and other inspiring resources, buzz on over to kickassboomers.com. And don't forget to join our Kickass community on Facebook or LinkedIn to continue the conversation. Be bold, not old.